The first half of this chapter was packed with background knowledge about the Void Century and the Poneglyphs, and the second half was just absolutely tear-jerking.
One Piece, Chapter 395, Ohara versus the World Government.
Wow, this was really a gut-wrenching one to read, and I went through and read it again, and it was just every bit as gut-wrenching and heart-wrenching, I guess I should say. Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the awesome and flashback-ridden, but ultimately can be very depressing at times, tale of One Piece. Our last chapter, of course, saw us with really all hell about to break loose on the island of Ohara, and Spandine and company are pretty much found the evidence that they needed to which was just a formality, really. That's what Spandine said. So they can obviously wipe out all the scholars and archaeologists, and that's really how things left off. Robin's mother, Ulvia, has been, of course, captured and beaten, and just very, like I said, just terribly depressing. That's how the chapter left off. The chapter picks up, and we actually see Saul, the giant, and all of a sudden it's like something hit him, and he remembered something, and he's running towards trying to find Robin, And then we also go and we see some of the world government officials, or whatever, the Marines, whatever you want to call them. They found one of the Poneglyphs, and no matter what they try to do to it, it won't break or scratch or crack or anything like that. And I have no idea, when you find a giant stone with ancient writings on it, why you would attempt to break it. That just, to me, that is the most asinine thing ever. Regardless of, and maybe it's just because they're taught, to any time they find something that relates to this Void Century, just to try to destroy it. But absolutely asinine to me. It's like, why would you try to break it? That's the first thing I said. It's unbreakable. Did you bother trying to do anything else to it? But anyway, I thought that was a nice little tidbit to learn about these Poneglyphs, that whatever ancient civilization left them behind, and actually Professor Clover talks about this too as the chapter kind of goes on. There was a reason why it was left behind, and they were etched into these unbreakable stones, because this ancient race or civilization must have felt like they must have had an enemy, and again, this is stuff that Professor Clover goes into. So we wind up going over to that portion of it where, of course, all the scholars are around. They've all just pretty much been condemned and sentenced to death. However, at the end of last chapter, Professor Clover said, at least allow me to speak to the 5 elders and tell them what we've kind of come up with and everything else, So it gets him, Spandine gets him on the snail transponder, and he's talking to the elders, and they ask if it's gone through yet, and this and that, and blah blah. And they say, well, it's a shame, but unfortunately, we just can't turn a blind eye to this type of, they've broken this eternal law and everything else, And Professor Clover's like, don't patronize me. Don't try to, it's just convenient for you to go and disallow people to actually look this stuff up. And one of the elders that's talking through the transponder snail, says, oh no, and you don't understand. There's a reason that it's forbidden, and the reason is because, knowledge about that can awaken an ancient weapon or ancient weapons that could destroy all the world. So even if you don't intend for that to happen, that's what could happen if it falls into the wrong hands and this and that. And again, it makes no sense whatsoever. You're telling me that you know of a history that's been erased, you know enough of it to know that there's information about some kind of ancient weapons that can destroy the world, but your way of not destroying the world is by killing anybody and trying to suppress any information that might come out about that, because you think that maybe the threat could eventually fall into the wrong hands. That just, oh, it smells like some bullshit in here is what it smells like. It smells like some government cover-up conspiracy type of bullshit, and that's what I think of it as. Anyway, as Clover goes on, Professor Clover, he winds up going and explaining what they have discovered so far, and they've discovered that that there was an ancient civilization, a continent, an island, if you will, a huge country, whatever you want to call it, right? That all information about this country has been suppressed and everything else, has been just methodically erased. And what Clover winds up getting to and getting at, and is really very direct in the way he says it, is that it's convenient how this Void Century, the timeline goes, that right when this Void Century ended, this century of missing history, is when the world government came to be. And you get, one of the elders is like, so what is it that you're getting at? And he's like, yeah, well, what I'm getting at is that obviously this ancient civilization, these ancient people, they had enemies. They had an enemy. And what if the world government, these nations that all united, were actually that enemy? They wound up leaving things not in manuscript and books, you know, committed to pen and paper, because they knew that, or they felt like that their history and what they wanted to go and convey to the future, this message, would be lost, right? So again, very cool stuff when you think about it on the whole, and probably the most information that we've got, at least up until this point, around chapter 400, about this Void Century, about these Poneglyphs. Prior to that, we've had little tidbits here and there, obviously, you know, since we met Robin a couple hundred chapters ago. But for the most part, it's been very, very, you know, hush-hush. So I don't know what else is going to wind up coming from it, but I know that Clover, right as he's about to go and say, and we discovered, the only thing I really discovered about this country or whatever that's been wiped off the face of the earth and all records have been wiped off, is he goes, and the name is, and all of a sudden one of the elders goes, shoot him. Like, kill him now. And this man pulls out a gun and shoots him right then, right before he can say this word of whatever country. So, talk about leaving you hanging over there, you know. The thing that gets me is that afterwards, Clover has been shot, but of course, like everybody, he doesn't die from one bullet. He's laying there, and he's still trying to urge Robin to leave, because Robin's now freaking out. Remember, she's just a little girl, you know. And this is really what the first half of the chapter is all about, and the second half is just absolutely gut-wrenching, which I'll get to in a minute, but, sorry, I mean, still a little bit stuffed up from, just, I don't know, not crying per se, but definitely getting fairly choked up. This type of stuff really hits me in the soft spot in my heart, you know. But anyway, so Robin goes over, and he still, of course, doesn't go and actually blurt out this name. So we, as the audience, as the reader, are left hanging conveniently. But he's trying to urge her to leave, you know, and she's like, no, I don't want to go with those people. And really what winds up happening is then Spandine goes and he just, you know, pulls out his hand and, oh, now I'm going to use the legendary Buster Call, right? So he hits the button on the golden transponder snail, and that sends word to, you know, to the silver transponder snail, and basically all the ships are in position. They're ready for a cannon barrage, and apparently are just going to annihilate the island. I don't know if these are regular cannonballs or some kind of juiced up ones or what, but I definitely know that, you know, 7 or 8 or 10 or whatever warships is certainly not going to end well for anybody, especially because this is not a very big island. At least that's what it looks like from when I've seen pictures of it. So the second half of the chapter, though, to me was absolutely gut-wrenching. Robin's mother, Olvia, she, whether you agree or disagree with what she did, and as a parent, I don't agree with what she did. I don't think that, I mean, I think that it would have been better for her to go and bring Robin with her on her journey than to just, if she needed to have this thirst and this quest for knowledge, even though there was others that said they could have done what she did, so it wasn't necessary that she actually did what she did and abandon her child. But the thing about it is, I understand her viewpoint when she comes back. She doesn't want to go and acknowledge that she knows her, that she has this daughter, because she doesn't want her to be persecuted and branded as a criminal, the daughter of a criminal, and be attacked and persecuted by the world government, right? So she winds up coming back to Ohara. I don't know what for. I mean, I know she tried to warn the scholars, but then she had that just completely senseless and devoid of all intelligence attempt at, you know, scaring Spandine, I guess. I don't know, when she shot at him and then threatened to kill him. She didn't actually do anything except for get her ass beat, and for the most part, I mean, yeah, between her and him, she wound up getting him to admit to some of the things that the world government's done, but who cares? It doesn't, nobody's ever going to believe you. You're already branded as a criminal, right? So, kind of a losing battle on that one. However, it was absolutely gut-wrenching because as she's getting picked up, Spandine says, bring her with. There's still another piece of information we need to extract from her. We can't just let her die here. And, of course, whoever's left on the island that's going to evacuate is trying to run, you know, run for the hills and whatnot. We know Saul, of course, is running towards here somewhere. That's probably going to wind up coming to fruition in the next chapter or two. But as you know, as Olvia is getting kind of carried away, pulled away and whatnot, Robin's like, "Are you my mother?" And it was terrible. Is that you, mother? And she's crying, and actually Robin is drawn very adorably, to tell you the truth, for a little kid. It's one of Oda's better younger characters, I believe, that he's drawn, and he's drawn several that we've seen through flashbacks and just in various parts, but really did a nice job with Robin. And anyway, and then, you know, she's trying to yell out to her, and Olvia is just trying to completely ignore her, you know. And Robin keeps persistent. She's crying. She's like, you know, but come on, it's got to be you. You know, I studied to be an archaeologist, and it's just gut wrenching, you know. And I just wanted to walk hand in hand with you. Don't you remember me? I've changed a little bit, but don't you remember me? And you know, and my heart breaks for her because Olivia can't do anything, you know. I mean, if she says anything to the contrary, they're gonna capture Robin too, and she'll wind up having the same damn fate or worse, right? So she thinks she's protecting her with what she's doing, and as she walks away, and then one of the guys, I didn't know you had a kid, and she goes, no, she must be mistaken, you know, it's not me. And Robin's just like, no, but it is, you know, and that's when she goes into the, you know, I studied to be an archaeologist, and I learned how to read the, and then here, this is what she does. Here, I'm Robin. I've grown some, but don't you remember me? I've waited all this time for you to come. And then you go and you see these flashbacks about how she was basically treated like shit by this piece of garbage aunt and uncle of hers. You know, the aunt got pissed off because she tried on her daughter's dress, and Robin's like, I was just trying it on, Auntie, you know, and oh, for a freeloader, you sure can eat a lot. And so you kind of get that like Cinderella vibe, you know, from her backdrop or her background, you know, and the 6 years that she's been abandoned by her mother from the time she was 2 to the time she was 8 now. That's some of the most important developmental time in a child's life, man. I tell you, that is, and I know that from having kids. But anyway, you know, I studied really hard and I became an archaeologist. I can read the Poneglyph too, you know. And then all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden, Spandine turns around. He's like, oh, that kid, you know. And they're just thinking, and Clover's like, oh no, stop, Robin, you know. And then so please, let me stay with you, Mother. Please don't leave me alone again. And then at the end here, you get commence the buster call. You know, begin simultaneous firing, target all of Ohara, the island of archaeologists. But absolutely, just like I said, just gut wrenching and just tear jerking when you you know, when you read it. And I probably shouldn't have, because now I'm back to the mess that I was 15 minutes ago. Just absolutely, like I said, just get you right here. And I think especially maybe me, because of having kids, but I think anybody can relate to it, because even if you don't have kids, you've got parents. And, you know, most of us care about or would like to have the love of one or both parents, or whatever your situation is, or even if you don't, and maybe you're adopted, or uncle and aunt taking care of you. You know, anybody who's left like that at a young age, and then she goes and she thinks she's found her mother, and I mean, she's a kid. She doesn't think before she goes and says, oh, and I can read the Poneglyphs too, you know. She doesn't realize that just condemned her, basically. You know, she's just a kid that, and I have a 7-year-old who's going to be 8 in like 5 months, you know, and he thinks the world of me and my wife, you know, and that's just it's a wonderful age. And, you know, this poor girl just wants to be by her mother, and obviously her mother's trying to protect her, but man, just gut wrenching. I don't even know what to think about it. That's where the chapter leaves off over here. Obviously the buster call has been called in. They're going to commence firing very shortly. And now Robin and her mother are pretty much screwed, as well as all the scholars and archaeologists. It was a great chapter for the amount of information we got about the Poneglyphs, but the second half of it was just gut wrenching, and I just feel like someone punched me right in my freaking heart, you know. That's where things leave off. My chapter question for you, brothers and sisters, is really, what are your thoughts on you know, just on all the information that we received in this chapter in regards to the Poneglyphs, of course, them being indestructible, and just the information that Professor Clover you know, was able to kind of communicate to the elders and really to us as the audience before he was shot. Let me know what your answer to that question is in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We look forward to catching all of you in the next one, Nation.
Subscribe to my other channels and follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram too.